What does it mean to be the fastest creature on Earth and still lose? We built cities and called them progress. Glass towers where forests used to breathe, concrete canyons where rivers used to run. And somewhere above all of it, above the noise, above the exhaust, above the 10,000 electric lights that burn through the dark, something ancient and feathered is circling, watching, waiting, and slowly, quietly, running out of room. This is the Peregrine Falcon. It can fold its wings and drop from the sky at 240 miles per hour. It is, by every measure of physics, the most perfectly engineered predator that has ever existed on this planet. It was here before our cities, before our highways, before the poisoned air and the shattered glass and the endless, indifferent noise. And yet the city does not care. Speed means nothing when there is nowhere left to land. Power means nothing when the poisons seep into the eggs. Perfection means nothing when the world that made you no longer exists. What does it mean to be built for a world that keeps disappearing beneath you? This is that story, and it does not end well. It begins on a ledge. Not a cliff face carved by 10,000 years of wind and rain. Not the sun-warmed granite of a coastal bluff where the air smells of salt and the thermals rise clean from the ocean below. No. This ledge is a windowsill on the 32nd floor of a glass and steel building in the middle of a city that never stops moving. The nest, if you can call it that, is a shallow scrape in whatever grit has gathered there. A few pebbles, maybe some gravel placed there by a human who felt guilty enough to try. Below, nothing but concrete and noise for 300 feet. The egg cracks open sometime in April or May. 3, sometimes 4 of them, pale and rust-blotched, tucked against each other for warmth, while the parents take turns shielding them from wind and rain that tears through the urban canyon with a violence no cliff ever produced. The hatchling that emerges is almost entirely helpless, a trembling clot of white down, eyes barely open, beak tilted upward in silent demand. And already, the odds are stacking against it. Roughly 1 in 3 peregrine eggs in urban environments fails to hatch at all. Of those that do hatch, a staggering number of chicks die before they ever take a first flight, crushed by weather, lost to infection, killed by the sheer indignity of being born on a building in a city that was not designed for anything with wings. The parents cannot always guard 2 or 3 chicks at once, and the city does not pause to let them try. This creature enters the world already behind, already fighting for a foothold on a surface it was never meant to call home. This animal lives in 2 worlds at once, and belongs fully to neither. Its range is remarkable. Peregrines are found on every continent except Antarctica, from the tundra of northern Canada to the sun-scorched cliffs of North Africa, from the mountain ranges of Central Asia to the coastal estuaries of New Zealand. In theory, this adaptability should be a strength. In practice, it means the peregrine has been forced to negotiate every kind of hostile terrain the planet can produce, and now, increasingly, the most hostile terrain of all, the human city. In the wild, a peregrine pair needs a territory of several square miles to sustain a breeding pair and raise young. In a city, that territory is fractured, sliced apart by highways, blocked by buildings, contaminated by the refuse of 10 million human lives happening simultaneously. The falcon does not understand property lines. It does not understand glass. It does not understand that the gleaming tower 2 blocks away is not a cliff face, that its reflection is not another falcon, that the space between the buildings is not open sky, but a death corridor of sudden wind shear and invisible glass panels. It hunts pigeons and starlings and the occasional thrush. It hunts them in the narrow vertical canyons between skyscrapers, where the wind comes in unpredictable angles, and the prey scatters into alleyways too tight to stoop into cleanly. A peregrine stoop, that legendary physics-defying dive, requires open space to build speed and open space to pull out of the dive before impact. The city provides neither. Every hunt in an urban environment is a compromised version of what this bird was built to do. And it does this, day after day, in a landscape that was built without it in mind, exhausting itself to survive inside a world that barely registers its existence. The chick is 6 weeks old. Its down has given way to the dark slate and rust of juvenile plumage. And now, standing at the edge of the ledge, it looks down 300 feet at the street below, and it must jump. There is no instruction manual for what comes next. The mother watches from a nearby rooftop antenna. She has fed this chick every day for 6 weeks, ripping apart starlings and pigeons into pieces small enough to swallow, delivering them in the rain, in the wind, in the pre-dawn dark. Now her role shifts. Now she calls to it a sharp, rasping cry and waits. The first flights of a young peregrine are terrifying under any circumstances. In the wild, a failed first flight might mean landing on a slope, a ledge, the ground at the base of the cliff. Uncomfortable. Dangerous. But survivable. In the city, a failed first flight means a window, a car, a gap between buildings so narrow the bird cannot spread its wings to break. Young peregrines in urban environments are regularly found dead on city streets in the weeks after fledging killed, not by predators, not by starvation, but simply by the act of learning to fly in a space that was never designed to accommodate it. The mother cannot teach it about glass. She cannot demonstrate that a reflection is not sky. She cannot warn it about the updrafts that tear through certain intersections at certain times of day, or the ventilation stacks that produce sudden columns of hot air that can flip a young bird upside down before it has the strength to recover. She teaches it what she knows, and what she knows was learned for a world that no longer exists in this place. The gap between those two things is where young peregrines die. The threats come from everywhere, and they come without warning. Glass kills more birds in North America each year than any other human-made hazard, somewhere between 600 million and 1 billion deaths annually by some estimates. And the peregrine is not exempt from this arithmetic. It chases prey at 200 miles per hour into reflections of sky. It cannot distinguish a window from the air beyond it. The speed that makes it the greatest predator alive becomes the instrument of its destruction. Then there is the poison. The city's pigeon population is itself chronically contaminated, dosed with rodenticides, anticoagulants, heavy metals absorbed from decades of leaded paint and industrial runoff. The peregrine eats the pigeons, and the poison moves up the food chain with quiet efficiency, concentrating in the falcon's liver, its kidneys, its eggs. Peregrine eggs become thin-shelled and fragile, the same catastrophe that nearly drove the species to extinction in the mid-20th century through DDT. The chemical has different names now. The mechanism of death is the same. There are also the collisions with power lines strung between buildings at exactly the height at which a peregrine hunts, with vehicles on elevated highways, with the guy wires of broadcast towers, nearly invisible at speed, that can take a wing cleanly off at the joint. There are territorial disputes with great horned owls, which are larger, do not dive, hunt at night when the peregrine cannot see well, and have no difficulty killing a falcon on a nest ledge in the dark. And sometimes, on a clear morning in October, the light comes in at exactly the right angle, and the bird hangs motionless above the city, impossibly still, impossibly perfect, and for one suspended moment, it seems like it might all be fine. Then a window catches the same light, and the falcon moves toward it. Here is the cruel irony that nature has written into the body of every peregrine falcon. It does not exist for itself. It exists for everything else. The peregrine is what ecologists call an apex predator, and an indicator species simultaneously, meaning its health is a direct reflection of the health of every system beneath it. When the peregrine is thriving, it means the prey population is stable. The air is clean enough to support insectivorous birds. The waterways are not so poisoned that the entire food chain has collapsed. When the peregrine is struggling, and it is always, in some measure, struggling, it is a warning. It is an alarm sounding at a frequency most humans choose not to hear. It controls pigeon populations in cities. Without it, those populations would swell to a degree that would overwhelm urban waste systems, spread disease, and create the kind of ecological imbalance that takes decades and billions of dollars to correct. The peregrine does this work for free, every day, at the cost of its own safety and comfort. And what does the city offer in return? Noise, poison, glass, wind shear, artificial light that disorients its navigation, broadcast frequencies that may interfere with the magnetic sensitivity researchers believe raptors use to orient in space. The city takes everything from this bird and gives back nothing, and the bird keeps coming back, because its instincts were written for a world of cliffs and open sky, and its instincts cannot tell the difference between a cliff face and a skyscraper until it is too late. It sustains the ecosystem. The ecosystem offers it no shelter. This is what it means to be essential. Peregrines occupy every landmass on Earth where there is prey to sustain them and an elevated surface to nest on. The ancestral territories are the ones this bird was shaped by sea cliffs in Scotland and Brittany and Newfoundland, mountain ridgelines in the Rockies and the Alps and the Himalayas, river gorges in the American Southwest, where the walls rise vertically for 1,000 feet, and the thermals curl upward in the heat of the afternoon. But those territories are not what they were. The Scottish sea cliffs are still there. The birds that nest on them face persecution from illegal poisoning by grouse moor managers who view the falcon as competition, a practice that continues despite being a criminal offense. Because the economic incentives outweigh the legal risk, and because the birds cannot testify in court. The Rocky Mountain population faces habitat fragmentation as ski resorts and recreational development colonize the high elevations where peregrines once nested without interruption. The river gorges of the Southwest endure recreational climbing pressure during nesting season, with human traffic on the cliff face forcing birds off eggs during critical development windows. And then there are the urban colonies, the birds in London, New York, Chicago, Sydney, Tokyo, Sao Paulo, who have colonized skyscrapers and bridge towers and cathedral spires in place of the cliffs that no longer offer refuge. These birds are not thriving, they are adapting. There is a difference. Adaptation is what organisms do when their original habitat has been taken from them. It is not a success story. It is what survival looks like when every good option has already been removed. Wherever this bird exists, it exists on land that has been compromised. Every territory is a diminished version of what came before. The peregrine falcon was removed from the United States Endangered Species List in 1999, following a decades-long recovery effort from the DDT collapse of the mid-century. The population has rebounded. The numbers are, globally, considered stable or increasing. Conservationists point to this recovery as one of the great success stories of the environmental movement. But numbers are not the whole story. Numbers count birds. They do not count the stress hormones saturating the bloodstreams of urban nesters, who live in constant proximity to human noise and artificial light. They do not count the percentage of eggs that fail silently in city nests each year from sublethal contamination. They do not count the juvenile mortality rate in cities, which is substantially higher than in wild populations, because city-fledged birds are learning to fly in spaces that actively resist flight. The wild peregrine of the sea cliff, the one that stoops 200 feet in clean air above open water, that nests on ledges worn smooth by 1,000 years, of the same family returning to the same stone, that bird is not the same as the bird on the 32nd floor of a glass tower in Chicago. They share a genome. They do not share a world. Somewhere above the city right now, one is circling. You will not see it unless you know to look. It is too high, too fast, too small against the pale and smoggy sky. It is watching the streets below, with eyes that can resolve detail at a distance 8 times greater than yours, eyes that evolved to spot a starling against a cliff face from a quarter-mile away, eyes now condemned to read the chaos of a grid of streets and rooftops and ventilation shafts, searching for something worth the dive. It was alive before the city. It will be alive if we allow it to be long after whatever we do next to this planet. It does not understand what we have done. It does not understand why the air tastes the way it does, why the prey it catches sometimes makes it sick, why the nest it returns to each spring has more grit and less purchase than the one before. It does not understand why so many of its young disappear into the concrete below and do not return. It does not understand any of it. It only knows to keep flying, to keep hunting, to keep returning to the ledge, to keep laying the eggs and tending them and watching them hatch and watching the young ones leave and watching them not come back. Year after year, building after building, city after city. The fastest creature on Earth, still losing ground. And the city below does not even look up.